Segment 2, the unsustainable habits of the West, again from America Alone. Quote, the European welfare state depends on economic growth and population growth. The former is now barely detectable and the latter is already in reverse. Close quote. Explain why the welfare state in Europe depends on both economic and population growth. First your premise.
Well, if you don't have welfare, a declining population is not a big problem. I mean, it's a problem in a kind of cultural sense that you won't have a very hip pop music business if you've got very few young people.
Right.
But actually, personally, that would suit me just fine. I don't want a lot of young.
You and I would be happy with Frank Sinatra.
Yeah,
right.
I would be happy to have Doris Day and trade Lady Gaga to wherever she wants to move to. So if you lose your young people, you have certain cultural consequences.
Right.
But not necessarily economic ones. I mean, my town in New Hampshire, the population peaked in the 1810 census. And then what happened, the sheep farming industry in New Hampshire collapsed. People moved out to the west. People moved to the mill towns in southern New England. And my town's population declined all the way till the 1940 census. But it didn't matter because we didn't have a welfare state predicated on the basis that there would be sufficient young people to pay for the retirements of the old people. Now, when we say retirement, by the way, we're talking about a problem that most societies before ours never had. If you look at Greece, something like the best part of 300 professions in Greece, you're allowed to take retirement at 50. 50. So in other words, you work from 20-something to the age of 50, and then you spend 3 decades living at somebody else's expense. Well, who's going to be that somebody else? If you don't have any children, you've got to import someone to be the somebody else, and the people that Europe decided to import were Muslims.
Almost every issue facing the European Union, I'm quoting again from America Alone, from immigration rates to crippling pension liabilities, has at its heart the same root cause, a huge lack of babies. Close quote. Give me a kind of summary statement, if you can, on why France, as we know it, can't survive under the current birth rate.
Well, it depends on what you think a nation is. If a nation is just a zip code, if a nation is a gate at LAX and it just happens to be an accumulation of the people who are standing around in the gate waiting for whatever until their flight is called, then yes, there will be a France and there will be a Netherlands and there will be an Italy and a Germany. But if you think that a nation is the accumulated inheritance of its past, then there will be no France, and there will be no Germany, and there will be no Italy. It's just a couple of days ago, a prominent politician in Angela Merkel's party in Germany called for the removal of crucifixes from German schools. Germans are post-Christian, like most of Europe, but it is part of their cultural inheritance that you will still see crucifixes displayed in German schools. This Muslim lady is making the point that this now...
the official was a Muslim?
Yes, this is a Muslim member of Angela Merkel's party in Germany, and she's making the reasonable point that these crucifixes no longer speak to what Germany is, and more to the point, what Germany will be in 20 years. So they're going to go. It doesn't even have to be anything that basic. If you look at British pubs, you look at the English village pub. Is there going to be a need for an English village pub? I mean, if you know English villages well from your university days, Peter,
right.
If you go to those villages in Oxfordshire, you'll have a tiny little main street on which there'll be 6, 7, 8 thriving pubs.
Right.
Now, once that population becomes 20-30% Muslim, how many of those pubs are still going to be in business? So it affects everything. It transforms. You can't have this kind of population transformation without having a broader cultural, socio-economic, and political transformation too.
Okay, so let me tell you what I think of when I think of France. 1, nominally, but still nominally, Catholic. 2, rigid separation between church and state, the laïcité policy. 3, a vivid sense of having played a role in European history. Some sense, because the French educational system is pretty good at history as best I can make it out, the kids will understand Napoleon and the Revolution and the long line of French kings through Louis IX all the way back to Pepin. So they will place themselves in relation to the long story of European history. Give me what France will look like, how those three aspects of what I think of as French will be changed in 20 years, say.
Well,
or is 20 years too little? Am I taking?
No, I don't think so. I think in 20 years' time. Just to take, you mentioned schools. I mean,
right.
If you take, for example, Antwerp in Belgium, 40% of the children in Antwerp elementary schools select Islamic studies as their religious studies class, versus 26% for Catholic and roughly the same number for non-confessional studies. So in other words, that is the future of Antwerp. So 20 years' time, all those grade schoolers are going to be in their late 20s and early 30s. So you're not wrong. That's the time frame we're talking about. And in France, most of those Catholic schools, most of those Catholic churches are going to be closed. Maybe some of them will be retained as heritage sites, but they're not going to be living Catholic churches. If you think of what was once St. Sophia's Cathedral in Istanbul, it's now a museum. So you can go and see you can go and see what was once there, but it's no longer a going concern, and that's what those Catholic churches will be like. You talk about the history that's taught in French schools. They're not going to be teaching the Second World War in French schools because it's going to be problematic.
The Turks are on the wrong side.
Well, and beyond that, the whole question of the Holocaust becomes contentious when you're teaching it to Muslim school children. That's why Dutch schools, for example, decide discretion is the better part of valor, and it's easier just to skip the whole Second World War. British schools increasingly find it's easier to skip the Crusades. So when you have this kind of essentially population transformation, it changes not only the present and the future, but it even changes the past, because the past has to be retrospectively brought into line with some kind of new national narrative.